The better player always wins is a statement that people hear all the time, whether it be in fighting games, card games, or any sort of competition.
Only have a mat on the floor. I think he's in the bed. Oh, Faker maybe in trouble here. Deathmark tries to clean it up for Ryu. Oh, look at the cleanse. Look at the moves. Faker, what was that?
Despite this, other factors outside of the game, from how long you slept to what you ate, can affect your play. However, that's often not enough to cause players to lose to people who are much worse than them.
Wait, the team!
Oh my goodness!
Every now and then you'll see players who have all the right resources available to be a top player, including optimized combos, great mix, and good reactions. These players sometimes wouldn't find success in bracket despite what preparations they made, or sometimes be outperformed by somebody who might have been less prepared. If the better player is supposed to win, then why don't we see that same consistency everywhere in competition? Simply put, these specific players aren't able to efficiently scrub kill due to how they view their opponents. Scrub killing is a very metal-sounding name for what is simply using basic reasoning in order to assess the skill of the opposing player and adjust your mentality and playstyle to what is most efficient to win over them in bracket. Scrub killing goes a bit deeper than just skill analysis though, and we'll touch upon it in a later video. The most popular example of why top players lose to worse players is that they underestimate their opponents. Underestimating your opponent, also known as sleeping, no not that kind, is absolutely something that can lose people games. A player may put themselves in situations they normally wouldn't find themselves in when playing against players below their caliber. This is because they simply did not expect their opponent to have frame-type block strings, optimal combos, or even good reaction time. This will often cause sloppier play, and some players go as far as picking random pocket characters, doing suboptimal flashier combos, or attempt to win using unusual worse buttons. However, this isn't to be mistaken with players who purposefully pick bad characters in order to mind game their opponents, as some of the best players have shown that doing this is not only a sufficient mind game, it could be tournament winning.
Well, he tried to ultra and it didn't come out properly.
I told you!
It's important that, regardless of the characters picked and the buttons pressed, you stay strong and play the opponent as if they're playing their best character. If this is a character picked in order to do mental damage as the character is bad, it could cause you to play worse as you now begin to start underestimating that character, play worse, lose, and then start crumpling now as extra pressure is put on you due to being down against a joke character who that player doesn't even main. The best scenario here will always be to give your opponent as much respect as you would their main. However, giving your opponent too much respect is also an issue. This leads us into our other point. The other, less known reason is overestimating your opponent. Overestimating or giving too much respect is just as bad as underestimating your opponent, as it can and will allow them to get away with too many things. Far too often do players who are known for being good at the game get away with generally unsafe and poor options or hold their advantage for far longer than they should simply because they've made a name for themselves, whereas a relatively unknown player would have gotten punished for the same overextension, fake pressure, or for putting out that bad butt. Overestimation is where you'll see a lot of top players struggle against those worse than them because they'll expect their opponent to be aware of every situation that is occurring, despite their opponent possibly only having a base understanding of the game. This could cause that player to overcomplicate what they must do to win, and in turn mind game themselves into a loss. This isn't limited to allowing your opponent to getting away with mistakes though. By overestimating your opponent, you also put pressure on yourself that might make your own play suffer. This has happened even at the highest level of play. People will freeze up, drop their B&Bs, or just play worse overall due to them folding under the pressure they put upon themselves. Shout out to Chris Jitters.
I got the Chris Jitters. Oh my god, he went to the tournament, so I think I can't play my normal game because he went to the tournament.
The solution is going into the match assuming that your opponent is at the same skill level you're at. And then, through interactions and testing the waters, you can find out whether that's true or not. Knowing how to do this well is important. For example, put your opponent in the same media setup a few times. If your opponent is getting hit by your media every time, it's safe to say that they're pressing buttons and aren't great. However, on the other end of the spectrum, if you put your opponent to that media setup twice, and both times he not only blocks it, but then knows when to take his turn after it, or when to correctly break the setup, it's safe to say that they're probably a good player. Movement is another good way to tell the skill of your opponent. Can your opponent ledge dash perfectly almost every time? Are his Korean backdashes crisp? Normally it's safe to say that if your opponent has no problem moving how they want in-game, that they're most likely good. Players who don't have as much experience tend to not be able to control their character as well, or freeze up under pressure, not realizing that movement is a great defensive option. Now, let's say you're going into a bracket match against a player who you know is much better than you. The most important thing here is to go in with the mindset that you can win. Good players are good for a reason, however they're far from perfect. If Chris G can lose to Senior Taxi and Alex Vai can beat Bonchan, you can also cause upsets. Opportunities will present themselves and it's up to you to recognize them and capitalize. Don't underestimate your opponent if they're picking a pocket character, and don't overestimate them, allowing the pressure to cause you to miss punishes you normally hit or drop your B&Bs.
I hit him, but I dropped him because
so
Chris
scared.
G.
I'm so scared.
Oh my gosh, he got me in a...
Remember, no player is perfect. As long as you're able to play as solid as you can, you'll always at worst come out a better player having learned something, or maybe you'll just win.
Drop it. It's my B&B. I never fuck it up.